We bring in criminal defense attorney Brian Gaither, who has been following Tennessee versus Boyd with us. Were you surprised by the verdict?
I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised.
Okay, why were you shocked?
I was shocked because when you're watching the case, and I have my lawyer hat on, there really wasn't any physical evidence to attach to connect Boyd. They really didn't have a lot of stuff to really place him in that house. It's the same evidence from 12 years ago. But I'm not surprised because of the public policy, because this was horrific. And the Pontiac, it's like the jury found something to connect, and they got him in there.
No. I think the Pontiac was huge because,
Yes.
okay, see, my problem with this, I'm not happy with the verdict because I think it was a manufactured prosecution. I think they had the evidence in 2007, and now they've almost kind of manufactured new evidence like George Thomas. So, okay, here's the deal. That's the Sunbird Pontiac. That is the Pontiac that Eric Boyd borrowed from his cousin, Adrian Mathis. That Pontiac was at the scene of the abduction, the apartment complex where the two young people were abducted. And that Pontiac was also seen at the place where they were held captive and brutalized, and that was the Chipman Street apartment. And then that same Pontiac was later found at Eric Boyd's mom's house, okay? Not someone else's mother, not your mother, not my mother, but Eric Boyd's mother's house. So that, to me, is the evidence that connects. You know, I understand there's no DNA like that type of physical evidence. I understand that, but that evidence does connect Eric Boyd. And then in this trial, it seemed there was, again, like George Thomas was back then, he was there. And I have to credit Jamie Satterfield of KnoxNews.com. She, has investigated and reported on the case from back in 2007. And so she had told us that back then, in 2007, all the male defendants, so we're talking about Davidson, Cobbins, and Thomas, all implicated Boyd. So they had him back then.
And what took him 12 years?
Exactly. So I think the only difference, so this is what I'm hearing, the only difference between, and these are all the 5 defendants, the difference between George Thomas, so George Thomas and Eric Boyd, no DNA, no fingerprints, nothing like that. Davidson and Cobbins, their DNA was on the female victim. But with Thomas and Boyd, the difference is Thomas put himself in the house, whereas Boyd consistently said, no, I just saw Davidson after, and everything I knew about the crime was because I was, Davidson was telling me.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And like you said earlier, Boyd basically took himself out the house the whole time, but that Pontiac did connect him in some sort of fashion.
But I am with you in the sense I'm not happy about this because it's just not fair. And I'd like to believe my system of justice is fair. Okay, Vandergriff, the court is back in session. The judge is back on the bench. Charles Edwards still on the stand. Let's take you back inside the courtroom.
Mr. Edwards, if you'll take your seat, I'm ready.